Sunali is still here. Ooh. And the library art updates.
So Matthew Rose, they came up with a date. It's now June 24th. Kenna made a suggestion that I think is really nice, that speaks to the paint out hate and the climate. She suggested doing maybe the Sebastopol apple with a peace sign and one planet, one people, one home. Something that spoke to both the issues and might be more amenable to the committee. So want to hear what your inputs are on that. And Nidhi, who has been coming from the public, was going to check with schools to see if there were any students who were able or interested in coming out and doing the paint, because I will not be available on June 24th. So I don't know if there's anybody here that's interested and has that time available either.
And Sonali, one thing I can add for that project is that the Matthew Rose did go to our public art committee meeting last Tuesday and got some good advice from that group on a number of items. And I know there are a couple of volunteers from that group that will be help coordinating that as well.
Helping like fulfilling the proposals, or
no, more working with Matthew to help with the facilitation.
Okay, thank you.
So Sonali, I hear you asking two different questions. One is, does the committee kind of like that idea, and is it worth coming up with a mock-up of a design better than if the climate can change, so can we idea that was floated last meeting? And so does anybody have comments on using a different slogan or ideas? It's not an up or down. It's more of a, what do we want?
It sounded good to me that this one. Say it again.
Like one planet, one people, one home.
I like it.
I don't hear anybody objecting, Sonali. I don't
Okay.
know how well you can hear the room.
No, I can hear the room well. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Great.
Can I ask a question, Sonali? You said that the date is June 24. Is there a time?
I can check my email to recollect if a time was put out yet. So let me,
It's a Saturday, yeah.
let me
Because
do
the other, it sounds like if you're not available, I guess the other question would be whether there's anyone else on the Climate Action Committee who could be there, right?
Yes. And we were seeing if there was, any youth that would be interested in coming and fulfilling that project as well.
So should we put this on for next month as well to see the updates in design and report back from Needy around student interest?
Sounds great.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Do you or Diana want to move straight into the Apple Blossom Parade update?
Yes. So let's see here. Green Mary is no longer available to participate. Maybe Diana can share what the city council. Maybe you begin and then I can fill in.
Sure. The information that I can share is that Mayor Hinton and I are moving forward to organize a city entry into the Apple Blossom Parade. And Mayor Hinton's idea, which I think is fabulous, is to get a flatbed truck, she has connections, and invite all of our various committees and commissions to participate, either by being on the flatbed truck with signage or anything else, people, or in the Climate Action Committee's case, perhaps the group might want to march behind, but incorporating the DRB, the Climate Action Committee, and walking, right? Because walking is a good thing, not being on a vehicle, but just there. I don't think it's an electric flatbed truck, just saying. Anyway, the idea would be all of the various Climate Action Committee, DRB, Planning Commission, and I'm sure I'm missing some others. The Public Arts Committee, is that it? I think I've got all of them. So have all of them be involved in the entry that the city will be setting up for the parade.
Can
So,
you remind us
that
the
was it.
date again? Of the
April
parade?
29. And I think setup is like really early in front of Annalee, but the parade itself is 10 to noon. And we wouldn't know until close to the date where our position was. Oh, and then part of this plan would be the day before, which would be April 28, to meet up at Public Works to do some painting and decorating of the flatbed truck. That's the idea.
If we were able to generate a coalition that's beyond Recology, the Bike Coalition, just other groups that were environmentally climate focused, would we be able to come under that city entry?
My suggestion would be that the flatbed truck is really intended, the city's entry is really intended to highlight the volunteers who are on our various committees and commissions. However, I know that the chamber is very flexible, and Mariah, as their new ED, will continue to be about where they position individual entries. So I see two questions there. Number one is, we've paid for an entry into the fair. Can we have those people tag on to that paid entry? I think the answer is probably no. That feels like taking advantage of the chamber, but I can ask. And the second question is whether we could ask that those entries be organized so that we're all kind of collected in the same area. And I would think the answer to that question is yes. But I turn to our planning director. Do you think I'm misstating in any way?
That seems appropriate if the focus of the city council members who are sponsoring it is for it to be volunteers.
So that would be my answer, but I can look into the question and ask the question of the mayor who's really spearheading that. And I'll get back to you, Kenna and Joshua.
So it sounds like rather than having organizations that have their own branding, people that are working with and for the Climate Action Committee and whatever part, like members of the public who participate in working groups or projects could gather under the banner of the Climate Action Committee.
My understanding is that no, would be narrower, that the entry from the city is intended to include members of the various committees and commissions. So that would be the people who are sitting at this table. You might be able to include, for instance, Steve Pierce, who is in essence a member in many ways, but no, not a bunch of people, individuals, members of the public who are affiliated with the groups. To the extent that that's something, for instance, that the Climate Action Committee might want to facilitate, it would probably need to be a separate entry. And then I just encourage the Climate Action Committee to at least include a couple of members on the city's float and some signage.
Right, and Vice Mayor Rich, if I may, just hearing that nuance on the working group, I would say members of the working group, I mean, they're on our website
Yes.
and they're committed.
Yeah.
I would think that even
Yeah.
if they're not a formal committee member, that would be a good way to make that
Mhm.
division.
Yeah, definitely. I hope that answer clear enough.
Yes, that answer is
Okay.
clear enough.
Thanks.
So yes, Lisa.
Well, this isn't about the parade so much, but I know that the recycling effort and all the trash, the people who were posted at the stations for the Gravenstein Apple Fair at Regal, that was so successful and people really learned a lot there from the assistants at the stations. And was that something that was Green Mary's organization? Does anybody know that got that whole
I
setup?
think that may have actually been Recology where they do the sorting stations. And Vice Mayor
Yeah.
Rich, do you recall
Yeah,
from
so-
that if they were planning on doing it this year at that?
Yeah, so I can tell you that the Gravenstein Apple Fair effort was Alan Siegel and Shelley Brown, and supported by Recology and a lot of volunteers. And I think my recollection from Ambrosia Thompson is that they are going to try to do a similar effort at the Apple Blossom Festival with they had booths and you probably saw it, but I can check with her and ask. I know that that's a much harder event to do that at, but so I'll ask.
Yeah, I wondered if we have questions about that, if we want to volunteer, should we contact Ambrosia, you think? Okay,
But I'll put that on my list and get back to you and Joshua.
you.
Okay.
Any other questions about the parade? or
I have a
comments?
question.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, was somebody else trying to say something?
Go ahead, Sonali, and then Steve.
Okay, my question is, does the committee see it valuable for us to spend time and energy to put together a coalition to make a presence around environment and climate
Hmm.
at the parade?
So I think what Sonali's asking is, would this committee like to maybe peel off from the city entry to lead a coalition of environmental groups? Is that your question, Sonali?
Yes, while still taking the council members' advice or suggestion, recommendation that we still have representation with the city. But yes. But
So I'm
bring a
gonna let
presence.
Steve make his comment and then we'll pose that question to the group.
Well, my comment is, it's kind of related to the parade, but it's actually the after the parade part. And I'm hoping, and I'm like Sonali, trying to see if there's interest in staffing a booth. We might be able to share some with Recology. I can talk to Ambrosia and put out there what our committee is doing. It's the last 2 days of electrification survey. It's an opportunity to get some responses at the very tail end. And we have a lot of information out there about incentives that are available to people that they probably don't have any idea about. So I don't know if there's a fee for a booth. There probably is, even though it's partially a city sponsored event. So I'm trying to see if there's interest in something like that.
Well, it sounds like since Ambrosia is not here, especially, it
Right.
might be worth doing some outreach to Ambrosia, and then bringing a proposal. I mean, it'll be kind of late next time, but yeah, I think we're a little behind the ball in terms of entries, et cetera. But if, again, if somebody wants to run with it, then I think that's where the issue comes. Go ahead, Alex.
I'm available to help with the booth. I'm available to do a
Good.
shift or two.
Great. I think we'll have a lot more exposure than we did in that hidden corner from the Harvest Festival.
Zena, were you trying to say something?
Yeah, I always have regretted that the action group disbanded when this committee was created, because the action group was much more flexible, it had its website. And I think this is an example of an activity where we could work with Bike Sonoma or Bike Sebastopol, and they're already talking about doing things in the Apple Blossom Fair, having a joint booth. But as a city committee, it's kind of hard to do. So we can also say, well, are there people here that are still part of the old action group that want to take this on and kind of push it forward, rather than have to walk the straight and narrow of an official committee or delegation at a booth.
So your suggestion is that people could take this offline and make it not a official,
Well,
that the official committee can participate in the official city entry, and that everybody is free to make a coalition of environmental groups and add them in without the official committee.
Yeah,
Because that can
that's
be
my
more
suggestion.
nimble and we don't have to worry, you wouldn't have to worry about Brown Act. Joshua?
Yeah, I'm basically in the same place as Alex, where I support tabling and could pitch in with that, but the time frame for me feels like too much time and too little bandwidth personally to focus on a parade entry. Aside from joining the city thing, seems pretty easy. A table there seems like it really should be done, I would suggest, and I'm happy to help with that.
Yeah, Emmett?
I just wanted to point out too, if like for Steve, if your goal is to get these into people's hands, you could do that at the parade as well, right? Just
That's true.
hand them directly to people. It's a great chance to do that.
Can be kind of a littering thing, but.
Well, we could have
Yeah.
big ones where they just use the QR code,
Yeah.
you know, where we could have sandwich boards.
I do want to contact Ambrosia about doubling up on a table with Recology because the fees are kind of high. I looked into it and even for us, they'd be kind of high.
So it might be worth seeing if Recology would host some materials at their booth. Yeah, Dina?
I think there's some advantages of going with the city float because it's easier and because it's showing that we are working with the city on this issue. And I can say that easily because I can't participate. I'm out of town working then.
Diana?
Yeah, so a booth, the Sebastopol Service and Action Coalition reserved a booth, and my understanding is that it's $150 for 2 days of the festival. But with the city helping to fund, so what I will do is, just to coalesce my thoughts here, is I'm going to go ahead and find out whether, I'll contact Mariah at the chamber and ask whether there's an opportunity for the city to have a free booth in the volunteer section. Yeah, can ask the question. She may say, yes, there is a volunteer area. And then that might be an opportunity for the Climate Action Committee to put out an environmental message and make that effort. So I will do that and get back to you, Kenna, because otherwise it's $150 for the booth.
All right, that sounds great. And it sounds like we have space to join the city if we want to. And then we can make an official determination of who and what and whether we're riding on the truck or, you know, trailing behind it in protest next month at our meeting right before the parade. But thank you to everyone for your willingness and interest in engaging the community and be part of a really joyful moment in our city every spring. And I think it's a nice thing for us to lean into. So thank you all. And thank you, Sonali, for keeping it alive.
And just want you, yes, and Steve, I'm happy to man the booth as well for person the booth.
Yay. All right, so moving on to transportation and Vision Zero.
Yeah, so Emmett joined us in the transportation group. Moody is still attending, although he's not on this committee anymore. And Alex is there, and me. So I'm still looking for a few more people. It would be wonderful if Gary could join us or somebody else from the electrification community. Because there's a lot of activity in that area of EVs. So with respect to Vision Zero, we discussed the Vision Zero and the role of the city in promoting Vision Zero. I'm not sure many people here know the history of Vision Zero. Vision Zero is a worldwide framing of the possibility that you could have mobility without death and accident. It started in Oslo in Norway, and all kinds of cities have formulated frameworks to improve their transportation infrastructure. So Sonoma County also has created a Vision Zero vision, and Sebastopol actually, I think Kari participated in a work group that advised about the content of that document, and that was accepted maybe 3 years ago. The city of Sebastopol has done a polling and some kind of questionnaire online to get people's feedback. But as far as we are aware in the transportation group, nobody of that we have not yet adopted or subscribed to Vision Zero. Although like Rohnert Park, Santa Rosa, Healdsburg, Petaluma, many of these cities have adopted this framework. And there's a work group that meets every, I think, quarter that looks at the accidents and what could have prevented it. Yeah, I don't know whether you're aware, but I think about 5 people died in the since December in Sonoma County. And they were all pedestrian. So there's still a lot of work to do. And what we would like to see is that city officially adopts Vision Zero as a framework for its upgrading the infrastructure, the traffic infrastructure. And I would like to hear a bit, I don't know, it's on the website, it doesn't say much about what is being done among staff. So that's, we bring it up here today just to kind of explore how we best can promote this idea that the work group would propose to the city council, that we officially adopt Vision Zero as a framework for preventing injuries and traffic deaths in Sebastopol.
So I think you can use the tools. I mean, we
Can you
can,
speak up a
we,
bit?
we can open this to discussion from the group. For sure, for input for you guys, and then you would take that back and fill out the project proposal and bring it. That's on the website. No, what's it called? Yeah. So the process of bringing forward, like, what is the actual proposal and submitting it in writing, but what is it that you're wanting from the group today?
Well,
in
maybe
terms of input?
Carrie could give a bit of a background of what is happening among staff. Is this already in the works? And how can we help to make this happen? That's
And-
kind of the idea.
Alex, did you want to say something? Okay, thank you.
Sure. So I will say that normally this would go through an engineering department. However, they are not attending those meetings. John and
Can you
I.
speak up because you?
Sure. So John and I are attending the Vision Zero quarterly meetings when we can. I don't think we have the capacity to be officially taking it on and doing that as another thing for our department at this time. I don't know what is all involved with the adoption of it. I do know that our engineering department has certainly been working on pedestrian safety initiatives throughout time. I believe there's some pedestrian improvements along Bodega that are going to council in about a month's time to award and actually do those projects. So I would need to know more about, I think we would need to know more, both engineering and planning, on what that would mean for this. And city council obviously would also want to know what that would mean for city council if they adopted the Vision Zero framework. What kind of a commitment does that mean? I do know that it is certainly a priority for the city, as seen with all of the pedestrian crosswalks that we've been, and the safety study that W-Trans has done, and the implementation that we've been working on those. I just don't know what more adopting the Vision Zero would mean.
Yeah, I was there last time and I don't think anybody attended from city staff. So you may have missed the meeting. One thing that is happening there is people are putting together grant proposals, joint grant proposals by different cities in the county in the framework of Vision Zero. So that could be something that Sebastopol could profit from by being more active in that group.
Can I have a question, and I actually should have shared this, but on at the next city council meeting, the city council will be considering a declaration that March 30th is as Zero Waste Day, International Zero Waste Day. So that's on the agenda to recognize March 30th as International Zero Waste Day. My question, though, is having looked at the international definition of zero waste and the Zero Waste Declaration, is that the same initiative as Vision Zero, or is that yet a different initiative?
That's a very different thing.
Okay.
So, zero waste is about waste and material culture.
And
This
Vision
is
Zero,
about Vision Zero as a goal
okay,
to eliminate traffic injuries and
Got
death
it.
by
So-
redesigning the infrastructure.
thank you. Thanks. That certainly is different, similar goals, but different vehicles, actually. Thank you.
Joshua?
Yeah, just responding, personally as a member of the committee, I'm on the one hand in a similar place with Carrie of feeling like the city is doing and has been doing measures on pedestrian safety, and what joining Vision Zero would actually mean in terms of commitment is unclear. And so I would suggest that this proposal needs more research and representation before we can actually form an opinion on it. Personally, I totally support the ideals of Vision Zero, and I understand how it's related to transportation and all of that. I'm not sure how it relates to climate focus. And so there's this question of how much effort and how much bandwidth would be expended by the committee in pursuing this along. If it's a simple, let's sign on to this in principle thing that you're asking for the city, I think that's a slam dunk, with some preparation. If it's, oh, we have to invest in some larger thing that involves capital funding and all this activity, to me, it feels like a little bit of a digression from the committee mission. And so I personally would be more reticent.
Well, let
Yeah,
me-
I'm
let
gonna
me
recognize
respond.
Emmett real quick.
Well, this is, I mean,
Zeno, can
as
you,
the chair of the transportation.
Zaino?
Respond here.
Zeno, I'm asking you to let other people have a turn. So to just wait to be recognized, we're all getting used to this in person, and it's hard for me to like peripherally I know I keep missing Lisa wanting to talk. So if I recognize someone to talk, I would just ask for you to respect that as I get used to this new format.
Well, is this a question to me or is it a question?
It's a question
It's
to
to
the
Em-
transportation group.
Okay, I'll just say what I want to say and then go on. I just want, I would disagree quite a bit about it being tangential to climate goals, just in that 60% of our activity-based emissions are in the transportation sector. The majority of our trips are less than 2 miles and can be done by walking or bicycling. And so anything that we can do, like Zeno said before, to reduce barriers to people doing that is important. And Vision Zero goals are very much aligned with goals to make biking and walking safer. So I think it's like would be on top of my list of things that would be applicable to climate action. And I just wanted to like circle back to what it would mean for the city. I don't know per se, because this just came up recently for our committee, but there is a sample resolution that local jurisdictions can pass that was part of the appendices of the Sonoma County Vision Zero action plan. And that might be a place for us to start by looking at that and thinking about how that could apply, what it would mean if passed by the city of Sebastopol. So maybe that's homework for all of us to do between now and considering this further.
Yeah, thank you, Zeno. Did you want to add to that?
Well, things are changing in transportation and infrastructure building. So Vision Zero is part of Caltrans now. So to motivate a project for your local community, you need to use the language and design ideas of Vision Zero, right? Vehicle miles traveled is now the criterion. It's not level of service anymore, where you focus on getting a project motivated by that it doesn't obstruct traffic. But now we do vehicle miles traveled. So we want to show that we have less vehicle miles traveled in our project, part of Vision Zero, right? So there's a direct, if we cannot make the roads safer to slow transportation, we are not winning the war on reducing greenhouse gases in transportation. So there's a direct connection between safety on the road and having more participation of people that walk, that bike, that skateboard. You need to slow down traffic. You need to make it more safe on the road. And that's what Vision Zero is all about. And we have contributed to that plan. Carrie was part of the development of the plan, but somehow Sebastopol had dropped the ball on this, I feel. And we should revisit this. And I asked when I attended this meeting, I asked where's Sebastopol, and he said, well, they haven't accepted this plan yet. They started talking about grant application, doing it together. So I feel we can profit both intellectual, conceptually, and in terms of practical things, in terms of grant application.
So I think this is the kind of climate action that I like the best because I'm a health person. So it's got all these great public health co-benefits, right? You could call it a climate action with health co-benefits or a health action with climate co-benefits, however you want to. It's working in both directions, in both spheres. And but I just think to articulate clearly how those things are connected so that the committee can bring it forward as a climate action, because that's what we bring to city council, right? And then tying in, what the other co-benefits are. If what you're asking is for this committee to bring it to council, and then just trying to lay out, like, what is the difference between us being signatories and non-signatories in terms of real change in the city, right? Is it just a sign? Is it symbolic action, or is it a real action that creates change and meaning? And I think you guys have that in your heads, and maybe just getting it down on paper so that we can digest it and people can do some research and reading, coming into the meeting, where you make a formal proposal. That I think that would be really helpful to the group. Yes, go ahead, Alex.
Sounds like we just need to clarify our ask and proposal and get back to you at maybe the next meeting or so.
I think, does anybody have questions or comments that might help them understand where we might be confused or want more? Go ahead, Diana.
Yeah, my comment is just doing some brief research. It looks like SCTA is involved in a Vision Zero effort, and our appointee to SCTA is currently Mayor Nisa Hinton. So you might consider reaching out to Mayor Hinton, because there are probably materials, sorry, there's kids outside the window, materials available that she could give you access to.
Do anybody on transportation have other questions or want to elicit any more feedback from other members? No. Okay. So would you like to be on next agenda for this, or do you want to just let us know?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we will move on to workplace charging energy group.
Oh, I see.
Hi, Jerry.
Jerry is here and large writer of the document, and maybe he would like to present.
No. Do I need to present?
Well, I can. This is stuff that the committee has heard before on workplace charging, so I can keep it probably pretty quick. So what we're trying to do, and many other parties are looking at this, Sonoma Clean Power is especially looking at this, is how can we deal with our increased demand for electricity is going to have an impact on the grid, is having an impact on the grid. How can we balance our use to be more in line with the production, and especially around solar? So what happens right now is after midnight, all those electric car owners usually have their charger scheduled. So they try to take advantage of cheaper rates from midnight till I think it's in the afternoon. Unfortunately, a lot of that charging is then using the dirtiest, most polluting plants that are out there, the natural gas fired charging plants. Meanwhile, we have all this solar production happening during the day. And sometimes there's so much solar production in California that we have to pay adjoining states to take some of that extra power that's produced during the day. So that this situation could keep getting worse unless we can try to balance our consumption with the production of solar in particular. So a few months ago, Lisa and I and Tor Allen met with the facilities manager at Annalee High School and talked to them about this coming Sonoma Clean Power pilot project that's looking at funding approximately 4 sites for workplace charging. They're looking at 10 to 20 chargers per site. And the whole idea is that these aren't your expensive public chargers. These are much cheaper to install chargers that would be under the auspices of like an employer. And Annalee was very interested in it, and thankfully Tor followed up with them, and they are now applying for a PG&E grant, not Sonoma Clean Power because their program's not up yet, but they're applying for a PG&E grant that will be for 6 chargers there. And they're looking at it for the old Laguna High School lot, if you know where that is, across from the large gym. There's approximately 19 spaces there. So there are a lot of other spaces there in Annalee, but there are issues with most of them. Either they're sites of future construction or the electrical power issues. So that site works well for this program. And the Office of State Architect it's going to be pushed into their court, and that takes about a year to go through the state architect to approve these 6 chargers. Meanwhile, Sonoma Clean Power's pilot project is hoping to launch late spring, and they are looking for other sites. If we have some ideas of other workplace charging sites that might be applicable to this, as just a kind of cursory walk around town, I've looked at various sites, and usually you'll see like 3 or 4 electric cars. And they're hoping that there's enough interest from there's enough electric cars that people will actually use the installation of the chargers, but they also want to promote that people who don't have electric cars now will end up getting them because it's so much easier to charge at work. So if you have ideas of specific employers that we could approach, that would be helpful, given that we're looking at this kind of hopefully spring. You know, they're in the middle of putting out a RFP, a request for proposal, to start getting some of the technical stuff lined up for they'll have to hire a consultant just to help with figuring out the chargers. So, you know, most of these things take much longer than one would think.
Alex?
Sorry, this is a separate but related question. Since they're going to be reducing the rate of power that they're paying residential customers in April, are we going to see any decrease in cost on the power side, maybe during certain windows? I'm guessing that's a no, but you see what I'm saying? Because they're going to reduce what they're going to be paying their solar customers, right? Is that
So
show any relief?
the NIM 3.0 that you're referring to that
Yeah.
does start in the middle of April, solar will be compensated certainly less unless you have batteries installed. So I'm not sure how that fits into this charging issue, but we want to pair that solar consumption. If any of you have electric cars and you have solar, you know, your electric car is probably your biggest consumer in your house by far and away, just the amount of demand that it puts on. So I'm not quite sure what your question is there. Well, go ahead, follow up. And then
Okay,
just-
yeah, no, that's helpful. And I think, so for me, it sounds like educating energy or electric car owners, or just people that, you know, consumers in general. Maybe there's a engagement series night that we can do, and that can be part of what we talk about, and how to maximize the efficiency of your energy use. And maybe part of that is using at the majority or charging your vehicles or whatever during the day, or getting battery systems. Like maybe there's ways we can educate, because it seems like the resources are available, but maybe people need to figure out how to use them more efficiently.
Definitely. Lisa?
My understanding was that the PG&E grant, they did get it, that Annalee did get it.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah. And I guess the only other comment would be that if people know that they can charge at work and have a designated parking spot in a lot, you know, that's kind of what they're going for, because it's going to mean that more people will feel safe buying an electric car and knowing that they can charge. And there was something else, but I can't remember.
And I know that it probably won't be exactly the same, but from the process of looking into with Annalee, if you're saying, members of the committee and members of the public start looking, look around, see what sites we see in town that we could encourage to apply. Are there any parameters that we should know about? Like, do they need a parking lot that locks or, like a certain size parking lot, or is it public entities and private entities or only private? Are there any parameters that we should know about when we're trying to look and recruit?
I can respond a bit to that. The public entities are allowed to apply for the 4 pilot projects. My understanding is that locked or unlocked doesn't matter because it'll be handled at the charger level. And in terms of size, I think they're looking at that 10 to 20 chargers. So for a small town like Sebastopol, that might be difficult. Annalee, just walk around their parking lots, I saw 9 electric cars, but that's probably the biggest concentration we have in town. I think Dina was next.
And one of the larger employers in town. So that's why it was a good mix for them. Commenting on Alex's comment, there's the carbon conversation for June is on EV charging infrastructure.
Yes.
And I think Zeno was next.
Yeah, I wonder whether this project of Sonoma Clean Power is still open to some fine tuning. I mean, we do not have in town a lot of large employers, but we have like the Barlow, that a lot of people work in the Barlow. So if the Barlow could dedicate a small parking lot to be used by the people that work in the stores or the restaurants, and maybe form some kind of overseeing framework for that, that would not make a business in the literal sense of Sonoma Clean Power, but they may be open to a slight tweak to this program.
I can speak to that a little bit. I think that they realize that oftentimes, even in an office park, you're going to have multiple tenants. So they see that as one of the things they're going to have to overcome. They're not just looking at single employer sites. So something like the Barlow may be applicable. My concern right off the top of my head is what area of the Barlow is completely out of the flood zone. And that might be a tough call. And Diana, you have some contacts at the Barlow. Maybe you can float this idea of workplace charging.
Well, I could certainly try to float that idea. May I ask a question? I'm sorry.
Oh, I just was gonna say one nice thing about Annalee is that they have all those chargers to the solar array. So it makes it an extra good site.
So my question is, the workplace charging, you have chargers that are to be installed at Annalee. Are they restricted to use by specific individuals? Is it just employees of Annalee? Are students allowed? No, just employees of Annalee.
That's my understanding, but
Interesting.
Tor would be the one who really knows that. But I think that there's a possibility that they'll be using an radio frequency ID card that you'll put up next to the charger. Whether or not those spaces are shared amongst multiple EV drivers, I think it remains to be seen. The issues around what's my parking space and where it is at Annalee are pretty sensitive issues amongst faculty.
There's an understatement. But it sounds like the concept is that there will be specific employees who are authorized to use those chargers.
That's my understanding.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I'm gonna, oh, did you have another comment? No,
I'm
I'm gonna move to Jerry. I didn't see him there remotely.
Sorry, I was in the middle of repairing stuff around the place, so otherwise I'd be there. The Barlow probably is not a great place for this reason, is that you want the density of workers to be there when the sun is the strongest, And the Barlow workers, in a lot of cases, we're talking about the evening hours. So the question about, and Woody gave a presentation this last week at the NBAA on new legislation that's been proposed. The question about whether or not the chargers could be used by somebody other than employees. There's restrictions in a number of places, including Sonoma Clean Power, on who uses the chargers at the site. But there's legislation that Woody said has been proposed to make that no longer the case, which will be very interesting to see. I'm not sure whether that'll get passed or not.
Alex?
Yeah, I guess I was wondering if you had any update from this city staff on charger projects generally. I know there were a couple since we're on the topic. I wasn't sure if there's anything that's in the works or that's going to be completed or has plans approved.
Sure. So the one that I think I mentioned in my director's report, Dante has been working with PG&E to try to get charging. And these would be the big fast charging, so very different topic at the Burnett Street parking lot. And so they're looking, that's the one where PG&E is looking for additional funding because of the cost of the project. And it would all be through a grant that PG&E would do, and then EVgo, is that the operator? Steve, thank you. Would have I think it's a 10-year lease or something. They would maintain it and facilitate it, and all we need to do is basically provide the land. So that is a work in progress, assuming the funding all works out. And that's the one I know about. We did also look with PG&E at the library, senior center, that public parking lot. That has some issues because of both trenching and the redwood trees that are there, as well as the need to upgrade the ADA to current compliance. And it becomes a kind of a really weird configuration given the slope of that parking lot. So we did look at that one. There are already chargers in the High Street lot. And then of course at CVS, those are public chargers. And I need to try to say that every chance I get, so. And Steve, I actually did have a question, or maybe just a couple of thoughts of potential other places that might be of interest. I will say, yes, the Barlow has the issue that all of the Barlow is in the floodplain. So you get into where the equipment can be and whatnot. And that's been an issue with their other projects as well, and not being able to have the EV charging because of that. But a couple of other possibilities. There is the office building at Morris and 12. The northeast corner across from the Barlow that is raised and out of the floodplain. And I do know that like Synergy Solar is over there and some other folks that they may have enough to, EV folks in that complex. O'Reilly building. And then potentially the Hotel Sebastopol. They will have the whole parking lot across from Brown Street. And I do know that that's going to be covered with solar array and have some EV chargers already. So they haven't pulled their building permit, but they will be doing that parking lot very last. That's where they're doing most of their staging. So if that would work for them, I don't know. And then perhaps the Sebastopol Specialty Hospital. It's just one of those larger sites in town that I think about.
Right. That's one I walked by today just to check out how many electric cars, and there were 4 and a lot of maybe 25 cars. So there's definitely demand there. I'll try to hook up with you if you have any contacts for the owners of the office building at Morris and 12.
I can probably get that info.
And I believe O'Reilly already does have some chargers at their location. And I think did you say the new hotel is going to have chargers?
Yes, they're required to
Right.
by our code, but yeah, I don't know if that would be, enhanced by this program potentially or not, but
Yeah.
they already have, so they're probably not the best pilot.
Yeah, it seems like those parking spaces for the hotel may be for guests and not staff. Who knows?
All right, thank you. That's exciting. Things keep moving forward. There's so much energy coming from so many directions. So we will move on with chair reports. you guys all should have gotten an email from me about working group membership. So please respond if I got anything wrong. Otherwise, I think Carrie is holding that group with the comments that I received. So if there's anything else, please let both me and Carrie know. And again, you know, if we make a new working group, then we'll add it as, you know, if we retire one, et cetera, it's there, you can always continue recruiting and the list is iterative. It is not static. Civic Spark, I think, Alex, maybe you were asking, like, are we having Civic Spark? What's happening? We have not moved an application forward this round. We didn't have specific projects and it seemed rushed because of the budget cycle. Like we would have to commit to the fellow before the city council would have had a chance to do the budget. So last time when we got Phoebe, we got it through a mid-year budget review. Am I correct?
Actually, we submitted the application and we had some, a different council, obviously, and a
Yeah.
different context. But the council committed at that time to go ahead and do that as part of their budget
Yeah.
cycle coming up. So they knew that. That was 2 years ago.
Right.
And just of a note, I do have funding for that in our budget so that come next spring, we could, if that's approved, we could potentially reapply and then know that the money is there.
Yeah. So I think my thinking about it is shifted towards trying to really get the projects in place for an application next spring when the money would already have been allocated and we're not trying to get extra approval in the middle of a tight year. So I don't know if Carrie, you need anything, if there's anything else we need to do for that to try to bolster it being part of the budget.
We do have a budget schedule now, so I'm happy to, that's on the city's website, but I'm happy to send out when my department's review is, in case anyone wants to join. I know Steve and others have in the past, and that's what got us the grant writer, most likely, was that citizen input.
Okay, so I'm hearing when you send us an email that we should try to show up.
I don't think it's necessary, and I'd probably defer to Vice Mayor Lynch, who's on the budget subcommittee. But if you are interested, they're public meetings, they're accessible via Zoom, I believe at this point, right? Is that true?
They're the public, the meetings themselves are in person and public can attend either in person or via Zoom. And yeah, I think to the extent that this group is interested in advocating for any particular budget line items, when we have a meeting with you, Carrie, yeah, you should show up, even if it's via Zoom, any way that you can.
All right.
And I think we do have that date on the calendar, but
Yeah, I'll get it out to the group, so you know when it is.
we're sharing it today.
Great. Any other questions about Civic Spark? Yeah.
I'm just wondering what the timeline is. If we're thinking of next spring, we want to have a Civic Spark fellow.
So the applications are due like now, this month, I believe. That like we should be applying now.
Okay.
And that's when it's kind of out of sync with our, our project of wanting to get one we'd be needing to apply right before the budget committee does its work. So getting one approved for next spring so that we can have our projects really packaged and just get our application in and be ready to go when
Gotcha.
that's what makes sense to me, given how much we had a lot of change in the committee and there was just a lot going on.
And that aligns with the council's, their
Well,
fiscal year.
so if they approve and for this coming fiscal year, a Civic Spark fellow, then we apply in the spring, we've already have the money, so we can already just apply and it's straightforward and we're not scrambling, trying to convince the council that the projects that the Civic Spark, right, is
Okay.
less of a scramble in a tight year.
Right, and for those of you who want to mark your calendar, the city hall departments are scheduled for April 18th at 9 a.m. And now a link for that meeting will be on the city's meeting website. April 18th.
April 18th.
Yeah, starting at 9 a.m.
Can I make a
Yes.
Yeah, so my comment is the budget committee met today and looked at preliminary numbers. And they don't look good. At the moment, the revenue is looking at about what we had in 2021 projected. And the expenses are substantially beyond the revenue. So to the extent that the Climate Action Committee is interested in getting any funding for special projects, this is a year when there will be a substantial focus on core services. So to the extent that you can present any climate action projects, line items as serving core city services, then that will strengthen your argument. We're just at the beginning, but just kind of giving you a sense of where we are.
That's really good to know. And then it bolsters our resolve to continue looking for grant opportunities, since we do have the grant writer in place to try to improve revenues to the city, since we did advocate strongly for that grant writer. It would be helpful for us to try to support them to be successful in bringing revenues in.
So if I could ask our planning director to give us a sense of where the process is with the grant writer, because I believe that the city is at the point of having screened a number of grant proposals and is probably close to providing a presentation on the final grant applications. Is that accurate?
So we have had a couple of meetings. We had a kickoff and we just had a meeting yesterday afternoon to review. I think we have basically settled on the final list of grants that are at least make sense for the city to look into applying for. I have asked them, the adaptation planning grant is one of the ones that is on that list. I have yet to meet with the grant writer to talk about the details of what that could be for and what that would look like. I do know I believe the grant is due the end of April, so it's coming up soon. I don't know what their cycle for awards and things like that is. If it's a state grant, usually they take probably about 6 months to get up and running. But I don't know what this particular process would be.
Great. It sounds like there's going to be an immediate use for your adaptation group. If they get the grant. Yes, Lisa.
Carrie, I'm just curious what that adaptation grant would be used for?
So that's one of the things we're looking at and I need to talk to. I know Phoebe attended when she was here. She gave me a list of a few ideas. I don't have them right at hand, but she did attend the preliminary workshop that showed, talked about what it could be used for us. So, and puts together some ideas.
Is there a way to find out more about that? Or
Sure.
just
So
come to the meeting?
the adaptation planning grant, I mean, all of the grant stuff is always on websites these days. This is a grant that is through the Office of Planning and Research. So it's a state grant. And if you just search OPR adaptation planning grant, you should be able to find it.
Thank you. So we're past time. I have agenda items for next time, to the green building tour, the library art project, and then Vision Zero. Is there anything else for next agenda? EV charging.
That we'll vote on.
All right.
Can we add the eco station? Zero waste working group eco station?
Oh, and Apple Blossom.
And then I have a note for the committee that I forgot in my chair report. For the community garden, we have actually gotten 4 or 5 calls about new plots. So we've gotten some calls about people interested in garden plots already. We have uploaded the application for those to the city's website underneath the article about the revitalization and in a couple of different park places so people can find them. So if you do talk to people who are interested in the plots, that we're kind of ready up and running in the applications on the website.
So I apologize for us running over. If anyone can stay and help us put the room together, that would be great. Joshua will do a quick action item review.
So action item for Carrie, just to be sure to email everybody the attendance rules and the exceptions and all that for these in-person / hybrid meetings. Action item for everyone related to next meeting's agenda was we're going to reconsider potential updates to the website. So if people have things that they want to consider for shifting around on the web page for the committee, next meeting would be a great time to bring that back up. Action item for Sunali, more or less, to rough out the proposed design for the sidewalk painting for the library. And sort of an unspecified action item. I have a note that somebody should check in with Ambrosia about confirming the zero waste plans for the Apple Blossom Festival. Okay, Lisa, great. And then finally, that the Transportation Committee was going to refine their presentation of the Vision Zero. Are we sure that we have that form for bringing things to the agenda item is on the website? Okay, so y'all can be in touch with us, but there's a form on the website for kind of how to provide background. It just really helps when there's a new proposal to have a handout we can read ahead of it. Yeah, so then we'll just be more informed. And that's it.
That's not an action item.
That's on the agenda for next time. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for being so patient with this starting late and running a little bit over, but we'll hone this down. We'll get better at it. And thank you for showing up. Oh, this is officially adjourned until April 11th.